So Pierce, first and foremost, man, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to have you on, excited to chat with you, excited to learn from you and pick your brain about some stuff. So I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you. It should be pretty fun. I'm excited.
Awesome. So let's kind of get
Yeah.
into it to start. I'm curious, take me through your transition from like high school, leaving high school to kind of where we are now, and then we can kind of go back through it full circle.
Yeah, so I feel like I had a little bit of a weird journey in a way because when I started track and stuff, it actually was like grade 11, grade 12, and
Yeah.
before that, I uh I wasn't doing anything. I was just doing school. I was playing video games and I was really good at video games to the point where at the
Yeah.
end of high school, I had to decide do I want to move to California to play some video games and just
That
forget
good.
about forget about university and everything like that, or do I go to university and do
Yeah.
track and field? And at the time, I was like, oh, track's like the safe option. I'm gonna do that. So I ended up, choosing track, going to York and training with my coach. But every now and then, I'm always like, huh, I wonder what happened to my life if I just decided to go be a gamer.
Interesting. So was it going to be playing like professionally? Like was that going
Yeah,
to be
yeah,
like the route?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
I almost wonder you can almost still do that like after the Olympic career.
yeah. Now I'm all washed up, so no, I can't. But at the time, I was like,
Oh,
holy, what do I do? What do I do? Because my friend, he actually chose to do that, and then he went was in. I don't know if you know League of Legends at all.
yeah, know of, yeah.
Yeah, so he was a pro in League of Legends and he was chilling and doing the California life, and I'm always like, wow, that could have been me. But I don't know. I guess for a kid, it's like, man, to leave your house, live from living with your parents to suddenly going to America or a different country. I was like fuck that. So I was
Yeah,
like,
no kidding.
no, I'm not doing that. Yeah,
Jeez.
that's
So, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no. And then I ended up going to university and things like that, and even that was a big change to live on campus, even though I only live like an hour from New York, but to live on campus and to do track and do all your schooling and this and that. Actually, for me, the first year, actually the first 2 years was actually a pretty rough transition for me, and I ended up actually just deciding, screw it, let's just focus on track. And
Yeah.
I took a couple years off, and then I feel like I got matured a little bit, a little more, and then in 2019 I went back to school and I was doing school part time and doing track. Then COVID hit, and haven't been back since, but we'll
Yeah.
see.
What what took if you don't mind sharing, you don't have to go into too much detail as much as you want, but what happened
Yeah.
in that 2 year time period roughly that like you made the shift where you did your growing? As you said, like what took place if you can get into it or if you want even.
I think in the first 2 years of university, I was just I'm kind of an introvert, so I was very kind of isolated, and then I had to
Yeah.
do everything by myself and this and that. So I kind of got in this bad spiral of just I'd probably say, depression or blah, blah, blah. And at the
Yeah.
time, I had no idea what was going on. I was like, this is really hard at the time. So, I feel like taking a break, and within those 2 years, I kind of was introspective, kind of look back and see okay, this is what was happening. This is this. I need to be more, I had to try new things, meet new people, talk to people. And then I think just doing track and traveling the world and meeting new people, I've kind of just naturally grew into it. So I'm way better at just, not being such an introvert.
Yeah. Sweet. So
Yeah.
when did how'd you make the decision to, because what I from what I'm aware of, it seems your Olympic career kind of kick started from like RBC training ground, right?
Yeah. So that's actually a common misconception a little bit, where RBC is great and they've
Interesting.
helped me so much. But when I
Interesting.
was a junior, I was actually the Canadian junior record holder in Decathlon. And back then, RBC training ground was a little more prestigious, where it was
Right.
invite only. You didn't just sign up, or if you signed up, they'd select you, and it was just 100 people in all of
Uh,
Toronto or all of Montreal or all of the East Coast. So I actually got invited by Athletics Canada, and I was like, okay, let me go check this out.
yeah.
And I go there, and obviously things went well. I won, and back in the day, again, when you win, you got a trip to whatever the Olympic Games was. So for me, that was
Yeah.
Rio. So I got a trip to Rio, and then they give you funding, and that
Yeah.
stuff really helped me. Yeah, I was already in track, but RBC did so much in terms of opening my eyes when I went to Rio and seeing when you go and see I guess like really professional athletes compete on the biggest stage, especially in things that you do. It kind
Mhm.
of drives you and things like that. And then
Interesting.
blah blah blah. I went and wanted to extend my season, used the funding to fly to France, and had a really good result, and things kind of skyrocketed from there. So RBC is definitely a huge part of it, but I was already in track
Nice.
beforehand.
Interesting. Huh.
Hmm.
So yeah, I don't know. I couldn't find like where that information is. I'm really glad you cleared that up for us because that's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So with that, before that kind of got started, you said you were doing decathlon already. Why did you like? How do you choose that event of everything?
Yeah, so when I was like in elementary school, you had like your track and field days and things like
Yeah.
that. I was actually really good at triple jump. I broke like some provincial record and my dad was bragging about it in a meeting. And in that meeting was my current coach's old athlete, like former athlete, and he was a
Okay.
triple jumper. And he was like, "Oh, I want to meet your kid, blah blah blah." So I met him. His name's Kevin, and I trained with him for like 2, 3 years on and off until I was, like, grade 8, and then he's like, I want you to train with Greg, like, my current coach." So I go to him, and he's like, "You're too young. I don't wanna coach you." And I was like, "Sick, dude. I guess I'll retire." And then
Yeah.
that's the thing. That's why I got into video games to begin with. All of high school, I was just waiting to get older, I guess. And then
Yeah.
one day he messaged me, he's like, "You're old enough. Come." And I was like, "Okay, that's pretty chill."
Thank goodness.
And then I went for him to triple jump. Like, I want to be a triple jumper, and then one day he was like, "Do you wanna do an octathlon?" Which is, like, 8 events for, like, younger kids.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Sure, why not? I don't know. I don't know what this is. I don't care." And then that was the last time I did triple jump, so he just kinda he conned me into it, honestly.
So you got conned into doing decathlon with like a fuck it kind of
Yeah, literally, just like,
amazing.
well, what's the worst that could happen? How
That
bad could
is
8
so
events
funny.
be? It's pretty bad, in retrospect, it hurts. So,
Jeez, man.
yeah.
Wow. So that kind of pairs with something I do want to ask in terms of with the decathlon or 8 events, 10 events, 2 events, even doing one thing. So competing in one thing at an elite level is very, very difficult. Um, I'm curious how you manage 10. Like what's that mental like? Like do you have to train specifically to like for the endurance or for how long the whole competition takes or like what's that kind of training like?
Yeah, so I guess I'll answer in like
Yeah,
2
please.
parts. Like the first part, like in terms of like actual training,
Yeah.
obviously it's like a lot of training and things like that. But I find like every athlete kind of has like a specialty, you know? I'm good at jumps, some athletes are good at sprinting or throwing, and those things kind of come a little more natural, so you don't have to put as much time into it. So when it
Right.
comes to like high jump or long jump, I don't need to put like 10,000 hours into it compared to like throwing was always tough for me. So we had to put
Oh, sick.
a lot of time into throwing. And then there are certain events, at least for me, that I like to do like a lot just because I feel like you need to be a little fine tuned for it. So like pole vault and hurdles always try to do as much as possible because like if I don't, things go wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like people always like, okay, 10 events, it seems so hard. It's physical, blah blah. But I feel like the key to like make a good decathlete. And I've seen decathletes who are good, who can't quite get there or fall down or blah blah blah. It is the mental side of it, right? It's that yeah, you go out and most people do one thing or one event or whatever your sport is, and you give everything for it for that moment.
Yeah.
We have to do that, then reset and do it like 9 more times. And I think the biggest thing is, especially when I was younger, I'd run into this is that things go wrong. Like it's 10 events. You're not a perfect person. We're not the best at every event. We don't have enough time to be masters at it. So things are
Right.
bound to go wrong. And when things go wrong, you have to like reset. You can't like dwell on that. If you're like, oh, like it's the second event and long jump went bad, it's like you can't just sit there and be like in your fields about it. You have 8 more events. It's a decathlon. Anything can happen.
Hmm.
You're not going to be perfect the whole time. And just kind of taking that mindset and going to each event like it with like a clean slate.
How did you develop that? Or did you always have?
Uh, So, I feel like for me, in terms of like nerves and things like that, I've never really had an issue with that. But definitely, if things were going not great, I dwell on it, but I feel like it's just one of those things where you kind of just learn through like messing up. There are so many
Yeah.
times sometimes people look at like a career and it's like, oh wow, Pierce is doing so well. It was like I've messed up a lot of times. I've fucked up a lot of decathlons in my day. I remember like when I was younger, I think it was 3 years in a row, I like no heighted at our national championships in pole vault. And like those things at the time were like devastating, but you learn from it, right? And just like, you know what? Like honestly, half the reason was just being pissed off and upset about how things were going beforehand. So just like trial and error, you have to be ready, you have to be ready to lose to win, I think. So
Interesting. That's cool though, because you're not that like you're pretty young, especially in your career. So for it seems so like for you to be able to have that kind of emotional awareness and sense about yourself is like really it's pretty impressive. Because I feel a lot of people just let their emotions overtake and then they get frustrated and then like you said, they kind of drain out of it.
yeah, I feel like my personality helps a little bit because I feel like I'm a pretty relaxed dude. So
Yeah.
just
You're
go through the
laid back.
decathlon kind of relaxed as well. But yeah, some people are so hot and cold where I notice some decathletes like when it's going well, oh, it's going well. But when it's bad, it's like it's done for them. There it is over. You already know. You can see it in their eyes. So
So I have a question for you. Without sharing who it is, do you have an example of what you just said that you could think of that comes to mind, like a worse kind of like overreaction for both the good and the bad of what takes place?
um
It doesn't even have to necessarily be a decathlete. It could just be an athletics competitor. You just said it,
let
and
me
I'm
s-
very intrigued.
I gotta think of one where I can't reveal too much. So
Yeah, no, that's
um
why I was like
yeah.
I'm prefacing the question with that.
Let's just say there have been decathletes where they have expectations set for themselves, especially in actually I'll do a general run, especially in certain events.
Sweet.
And I feel like it's super almost like I'd say super common when someone is really good at a certain event and I feel like they're confident about that event and they have almost like so much confidence that okay, this is my event, I'm gonna do well to the point
Yeah.
where they don't like focus up and they do poorly in their event and they just kind of blow
Oh,
up for the rest of the decathlon. They just blow up. They're like, oh, everything's wrong, blah, blah, blah. Things like that without naming. I'm going super general on this one.
yeah. No,
But even
perfect.
single event, see, even single event athletes, sometimes you can see it in their eyes, they're just not in it today. So
Jeez, man. So, what do you think separates like so what I'm wondering is what separates like just normal like division one or like varsity athletes from that next level, like to get to the elite level. Like what's that separation?
I can name like 10 things. So I'll do like
Perfect.
three. I feel like the first one is like we are in Canada, the infrastructure isn't like NCAA and things like that. So I feel like a lot of
Yeah.
athletes don't have the best pipeline to get to develop and get to where they're at. You know what I mean? There are so many
Yeah.
U sport athletes and athletes who even in high school who are really good and kind of fall out in when they transition where there definitely is a gap there where I feel like we could develop a lot more athletes in Canada, but we don't necessarily have the infrastructure. And then I think a lot of it is mindset. I feel like obviously you need talent. Like we're not, you know, obviously
Mm.
you have to be talented at what you do, but I think it's just the mindset. I think a lot of the times it's like people can be talented and there's just their brains don't work. It's hard to explain, but you see it so much when you're actually in the sport where you're like you see this person, you practice with this person or you see them train or and they do so well in practice and they get to a competition, they're just like
Just can't
so
piece it together, right?
yeah, and I wish I had really like advice for people who kind of get stuck in that, but it's hard because I've never been like that.
Yeah,
So it's
you
hard
can't
for me. It's
really
hard for me. Yeah, it's
relate.
hard for me to be
Yeah.
like just do it. Like
Yeah,
that's
just
like I can't
fuck
say that because
it.
obviously
Just
it's not that
go.
easy. Yeah, just
Yeah.
yeah, it's not that easy. I do know that in pole vault it's a super like mental event and for the longest time I used to have problems with taking off because honestly the hardest part in pole vault and I say this all the time is pole vault is easy, it's taking off is hard. Like to do a full approach with like a
Mm.
5 meter long stick, stick it in a little hole, fly up in the air and not die and not be scared about it is like the hardest thing for a pole vaulter, and pole vaulters will go through like phases where they just like you just can't take off. You just run through the runway. You'll do an approach, run through, run through, run through.
Yeah.
I had a season where I had like 100 run throughs Do you know what I mean? And one of my pole vault friends, he was like, "You know what you need to do, Pierce? You need to like make that pole your bitch. Like fuck that pole." And then I've had that mindset since, and I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
you know what? Let's fuck this pole. Let's do this. Let's do that. You know, and just kind of yeet it. So for me, that helped. So
Jeez. Interesting.
yeah,
It's like you against the pole versus instead of just trying to become one and like separate yourself, you're like, no, we're just gonna attack it. We're gonna
yeah.
do it. Yeah, you kind of take the
Like
yeah,
yeah, it's like
remove
throwing
yourself.
A
Yeah.
Pokeball at a Pokemon. You gotta capture it. You know, you gotta tame the pole.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
If you don't, it's just there. Can't really do
yeah. Can't
anything
let
with
it
it.
control you.
No. Were you this is kind of a side question. I'm just curious about how into the Pokemon Go scene did you get?
So I played
Curious.
for like a month, but then I realized outside isn't my thing. So I know
Come
it's
on.
hard to yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I know that sounds weird, but outside of track is not my thing. It's
Oh,
like I'm
okay.
outside for my entire job, you know, all
I
practicing
guess
outside doing
so.
stuff where it's like when I go home, honestly the last thing I want to do is go outside more.
Yeah, go to sleep.
So yeah, exactly. So I always end up that's why I end up doing like I play video games, I play board games, things like that. Pretty loser hobbies, but it is what it is, you know?
I've never heard anybody say that though. But I guess it makes sense though if it's your full-time, yeah, your full-time career and then I guess I'm the same
It's
way
like
with sometimes inside outside and I know a lot of people who are the other way, so that makes a
yeah,
lot of
it's like
sense.
I've literally been running for 5 hours. The last thing I want to do is run around and catch Pokemon outside. So
That's fair. That's fair.
yeah.
So kind of circling back, I'm curious if you could, because we talked about the infrastructure and resources stuff that's available for Canadian athletes. If you could change without any BS, without any politics, no issues happening, like no repercussions almost, right? Easy, smooth. What
hmm
would be one thing you would change about Canadian athletics?
Mm, I'm gonna answer it more on like a university level rather than like a national level because I feel like that's kind of a
Perfect.
different issues. Different issues.
Right.
I just feel like the recruitment phase. I feel like when you're in high school, going to a Canadian school needs to be like better, more enticing. And
Yeah.
I understand it's hard because you'll go to the NCAA schools and they'll offer full ride scholarships and this and that and that and that. Like those athletes who don't necessarily get there, I feel like they end up just going and choosing their school. Like you don't have all these like I feel like schools need to be better at recruiting athletes. And I feel like they don't do it. I don't know. Like some do really well,
Interesting.
like Guelph and things, but they're like it's like for example at my track, it's like York University. So many people from different clubs from all in the GTA come and train there. I just feel like the recruiting should start there. You know, I feel like it's pretty easy, but sometimes it just doesn't happen because I feel like the actual
Interesting.
schools and when I see the teams, they're pretty dedicated and things like that. But
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes the recruitment isn't always there.
It's
They
almost
just
like,
sometimes I
yeah.
they like expect the athlete to almost be more dedicated than they are. But I remember for the
Interesting.
longest time, my coach was like the driving force for me to kind of be involved in track. It wasn't like me necessarily, you know?
Yeah.
You need like someone behind you to help. And I feel like that's where schools could really believe in their athletes instead of just like, oh, you want to do track? I guess you can come.
Yeah. It's just going and picking athletes instead of hoping, like
Yeah.
kind of just dealing with the pot of people that you have. To give, oh,
Yeah,
you have X amount
exactly.
of people,
And
X amount of students. Maybe
yeah, and of
some of them will
course,
do.
like university, some of the universities will go after like the obviously the really good people and things like that. But I feel like some people just don't feel as wanted, I guess, and things like that, which kind of sucks.
Yeah, it almost felt. I remember when I was applying to different schools, I was looking at kind of like what's available, what's like, can I pair something with like a sport that I was doing at the time, whether it was been like
Yeah,
because it was like offset cross country, offset swimming, and offset soccer that I had like done. So I
yeah,
was like, where could I like maybe push it to the next level? And it's like all the schools had like kind of iffy programs with each of those things, and then nothing really paired well. And the worst, at least from my experience, what I found, at least in the choosing aspect of it, was they didn't really allow for anything to work well together. Like there was no student athlete life. You kind of had to put one
yeah,
on the back burner. I don't know. I
yeah. I
feel
feel
like
that.
different systems are, I don't know if that's just synonymous across the board or like in Canada, or if that's just the five or
Yeah,
six places I was looking at. But
yeah, yeah. I will say one school I think is in track that I think is really, really good at what they're doing. I think it shows in what they do is Guelph. I think they're
Guelph, yeah,
super good at like reaching out to their athletes and making sure that like making their athletes feel like athletes, you know, not
really,
student. I guess yeah, like not students who do sports. Like you're an athlete in your
yeah,
sports because you know you think of NCAA, like they're athletes. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, they do school. They're not school.
yeah,
Not people who are doing. I'm in business and I do track on the side. I do basketball on the side. They're like, this is the basketball player. This is the football player. And I feel like Guelph does a great job. And like they'll send them on training camps and go down to Florida and do this. And then it just I don't know. I like the way I guess they treat their athletes.
yeah. They're almost treated like semi-pro already.
Yeah, it's like you
Yeah,
gotta I don't wanna say you have to act the part, but, you know, if you're gonna go from university to a national team, it's like it's nice to have a transition there, which
yeah.
university can do.
It seems more like clear too. So
Yeah.
interesting, interesting. So I'm curious. You talked about funding and stuff like a couple minutes ago, but I'm wondering what's the process been like for you in terms of like reaching out, like for getting sponsorships or brand deals? Like, do brands reach out to you? Like, how's that process been? Like, what's that kind of like?
Yeah, hmm, I'll start I gotta do this in 2 parts. Well, I guess one when I'm younger and one now. I guess I'll do now
Perfect.
first.
Yeah.
For, like, now, obviously, I have an agent, I'm with an agency, and they do all those things, and I feel like I'm pretty fortunate enough where I have good enough performances and I have worked with people in the past, like, you know, RBC, winning RBC training ground obviously is good for, oh, they work with RBC, you can work with other brands. So they do that and that's really good and awesome. But I guess when I was younger, I'm trying to think how things really worked out. Honestly, it was like, it is not really there, I think, for like national
Interesting.
team athletes and things like that. Cause like it's crazy because I have pretty decent deals and things, but when you look at like actual like the average national team athlete, they don't I don't even most of them don't have agents, most of them don't have great deals or deals at all or
Yeah.
sponsorship opportunities. I know people who like have placed really well at like world championships. They're not like sponsored by a shoe company or anything like that. So it's pretty rough for athletes out there. And I don't know, my
Jeez. Interesting.
it's hard to give good advice on how to go and seek which brands and talk with which brands. I know that one of my friends, Sam, when I was first doing these things, he said a good idea. You know, a good idea was know your values, know what you believe in, what you want to represent, and then look for brands in that way. I think if you want to get brand deals, especially if you're a Canadian athlete on an amateur side level,
Hmm.
you really have to put the work in and you have to go seek these brands. I don't think they're just going to come to you unless you're like under the grass, you know.
Yeah.
So
Interesting. Okay. Now, what I'm curious about with that is there's readdress here. With the sponsorships, I've always felt like because I have a couple friends that are like national athletes or
yeah,
trying to be. It seems like, yeah, you have to do so much extra work or go into it. But
yeah.
you was it that same amount of effort to get the like an agent or to be a part of an agency that kind of manages that? Or do you just like did the agency reach out to you? I'm curious just how that
Yeah,
process
no, I
works.
feel like I was very fortunate in my position. I had like I worked with Envision, which is like has Andre DeGraff, has all these people, had Sean Barber, blah blah blah, has Alicia Newman. So he reached out to me when I was really young, like 2016, and which is I actually really like that. Is what kind of when I was a nobody. I was kind of good, kind of not, but he was like, hey, like I'm Brian, nice to meet you, blah blah. I'm interested in working with you or helping with you if you need any help on any like sponsorships you're talking about, like I won't take commission, blah blah blah. So when I initially, I guess, became an RBC Olympian, because what happened is I won RBC and it was like a 2-year commitment and they gave X amount of money. But when I became carded, I don't know if you know what that is.
No.
It's basically like for amateur sport, it's like a government funded program that gives you like annual like salary, I guess, that helps with like your sport.
Yeah.
So only I got that. So when you get that, I couldn't get RBC. So I became an RBC Olympian, which is
Uh,
their like separate Olympian sponsorship program, not their RBC sponsorship
Interesting.
program.
Yeah.
So for that, I was like, that was my first time I had
Cool.
to really actually like sign a contract and this and that. luckily Brian was there and he was like, "Hey, I'll help you with this and that." But for most athletes, I have no idea what they do. I'm assuming you just have to get good enough and reach out to these people.
Yeah.
So I feel like when it comes
Interesting.
to amateur sport, you really have to take the initiative to reach out to brands, to agents, to make, just do speaking engagements, all this stuff. You have to put a lot of effort in, which is kind of unfortunate considering I don't think amateur athletes are any worse than like, NFL players or NHL players or baseball players. So
I almost feel like there's a stigma behind. I don't know if it's just because there's not as many Canadian, it seems there's not so many like Canadian athletes versus like how many like Americans or other countries that do well. But I'm curious what makes certain Canadian athletes stand out from like the pack, like once you get to that level.
honestly, I feel like it's just, I guess, what you're doing. Like obviously, if you're a hammer thrower or a shot putter, you're probably not getting as many sponsorship opportunities as 100-meter sprinter who got gold. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? There's more entertaining. Like what people like more is what people, you'll get sponsorship opportunities. So,
that makes sense.
and then
Yes.
like if you're in like a sport that's like not very popular, like I don't know, like track cycling or something,
Yeah.
it's hard out there. It's hard out there for them, You got to really sell yourself. You
You're
better,
in track cycling.
yeah.
Oh
So
man.
you're
At
playing
first I was
water
like, what's he
polo.
talking about? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. Jeez. Okay. And you don't now what I found interesting, I learned a while ago, you don't get like you only get paid for world championships, correct? You don't get paid direct like from the Olympics or anything, or I'm curious
Um,
like
I
what
think
events,
I
how that
think if you
works.
win a medal, you get some type of stuff. I haven't done that yet, so I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, you don't usually if you're getting money, at least in track, it's through World Athletics, which is like our like I guess our like IAAF or whatever, just our
Yeah.
governing body aside from Canada. So yeah, only they pay, and it's only if you do well. So like if you let's say you make the World Championships, you make the Olympics, you're not just making money. That's just not how it works. Like most athletes I know who are I guess like Olympians and things like that, they're not living the high and lavish life. I feel like a lot of people think we are, but no, not so much.
So what I'd like to know, because I know when we talk about this, and I know you have Olympic performances like to come and stuff like that. Are you since you're so young, since you're young in the sport, do you think big picture wise? Do you think like, oh, like down the road after? Do you have to think on the now? Like where's kind of like your head at, right? Because you're like
Yeah,
mid to late 20s, still young. Like where do you think? How do you think about that?
yeah, I guess it's like first and foremost I think about like my track career. It's like, okay, this year I have this meet, this big meet. Next year obviously is the Olympics is what I'm focusing on. But
Yeah,
like in the back of your mind, you have like so what happens if I just like get injured or I have to
yeah,
retire and what am I gonna do with my life? And obviously that's like with like I mean I assume a lot of amateur sport athletes just you sometimes you will do your sport, you'll leave your sport, you might be 30 years old, 31 years old, and you have no idea what you're gonna do. And
yeah,
if you asked me what I was gonna do, couldn't tell you. Do you know what I mean? There are a
yeah.
lot of things that can come from sport, a lot of opportunities, but yeah, I think it's really tough to think about what you're gonna do outside of that until you're done because I feel like a lot of your focus is on what you're doing right now.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm always curious though about that kind of stuff too, right? Just to see how like everything pieces together stuff. So
Yeah.
interesting because I know that's how I would probably be like I'd be thinking.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
geez.
I feel
So
like the transition out of sport is very tough for some
yeah.
athletes. I feel like it might we'll see what I do, but I might like I'll have to really think like sit down and be like, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? Which is like something you think when you're like not even 18, you're like, what am I gonna do? I feel like it's like the same thing. You're like, what am I gonna do?
Hmm.
This part of my life, especially because like I feel like for a lot of athletes, it's just like this is like the almost like the biggest part of their life in like their whole life. This is gonna be it. You've been to the Olympics twice or blah blah blah. What's next? So
Right.
it's tough.
I think there's a lot of things that people don't really see or don't really feel like behind the scenes. And what I want to know, kind of what was take us through like what was Olympic Village like, especially during like the COVID times, right? Like was it still like that or like
Yeah, so
how was everything?
I started off my journey with a 38-hour travel session from Toronto to Tokyo, and it was like to this day, I'm not sure if I've done anything worse. And I've done like a 23-hour bus ride to Florida. And
Gross.
so basically you go to whatever, went to Toronto, go to Vancouver, Vancouver to Tokyo. Honestly, that flight was the best part of the trip. So we get there, and because it's COVID, you have to have all your paperwork, this blah blah, and you get like processed in the airport, and you have to
Mhm.
go through like this line must have been like 3 hours. Must have been a 3 hour lineup, and you go in and you get COVID tests, you do your processing, this and that, and you get put in this holding room waiting for your like bus or wherever your transportation is to go, wherever you're gonna go. And for the
Yeah.
track team, we were gonna go to Gifu, which is like there's like 400 kilometers outside Tokyo, and that's where our training camp was gonna be before we actually went into the village. Because when you went to the village, you're only allowed to be there for 3 days while you compete, and then you have to get out.
Yeah.
So we were in that holding room for like another like 4 hours. We were like in the airport for like I think a total of 8 hours when you had to like get off your flight and do that. Then we get on a bus and we're like, thank God, we're on
Yeah.
our way. This is gonna be great. And we're like, we don't really eat. We haven't really eaten anything aside from like whatever was on the plane. And they give us like these sandwiches. And let me tell you, these sandwiches were like the saddest sandwiches. It was like a cartoon sandwich where it's like white piece of bread, one piece of like ham, one piece of like
What?
cheese, and like bread. And we're just like fantastic. And I don't know if you know, I don't know. There's like a thing with bus drivers or traveling. If you drive for, I think it's like 2 hours, you have to take a 30-minute break.
What?
So it took us like 6.5 hours to get to like Gifu.
Oh
And when
man.
I got there, I was just like, I'm done, dude. Like this is crazy. And then when we're in Gifu, and it was a beautiful city. Like honestly, Japan was beautiful. Obviously, I
Yeah.
saw it from like a bus, but it was really pretty. You get to drive through the mountains, and you're up in the clouds. It's really cool. But we were in a hotel that was like sectioned off, and the track that we were training at was across the street. And we weren't allowed to walk across the street. We had to go out, go into a bus that drives us all the way around and inside to let us in. And that's how we trained. That we trained for like I think we were there for a week and a half, 2 weeks ish.
Yeah.
And then as like people were competing, people were leaving, and I was one of the last ones competing, so I left pretty late. And we get to the village. It's kind of the same thing, a lot faster processing, blah blah blah. But what was really good about the village is because people were leaving and I guess people had to leave after the competition. We all got like our own room and our own bed. Yeah, they were cardboard beds. It wasn't that
Wow.
bad. It wasn't
Damn
that
it.
bad.
Damn
People
it.
are people, yeah. So, and yeah, the village was amazing. The village was like every other village that you go to when you go to games and things like that. But I think like I said, the worst part is that you can't leave the village. Usually, when you go to
Uh,
villages and things like that, when I was in Australia or wherever, you can go and explore the city. We can never do that. You had to take like a bus to your venue and your bus back. But the food there was great. Everything else was great in the village. They had like those like automated cars that just would drive you around, and it
that's
was
kind of cool.
really cool. But yeah, it in terms of like I guess the competition experience, obviously there were no fans, which kind of sucks. But
Yeah, that's weird. You said 2025, you get to go back to Tokyo as like the same setup and
yeah,
everything.
I'm hyped up. I'm an anime fan. Let's go.
No kidding. So now you get to actually
Yeah.
tour it and then
Yeah.
damn, that's exciting. Do you have of all the places that you've competed specifically, like trips you've been on that you've competed
Mhm.
in, which has been like stand out your favorite?
So my very first team, which honestly this it was almost too good that it was bad that this was my first team, but 2018 Commonwealth Games in Australia in the Gold Coast. We were in Australia for like I think it was like a month. We had a training camp on a 5-star golf course. We go to the village. The village has like a 22-hour Australian barbecue. We're in like newly built university residences. I was like living the life. People are doing my laundry. It's like, whew,
Jesus.
It was warm. We go down to the beach, surfers paradise. I was like, wow, this is
Come
what being
on,
a national team athlete is like. Okay, let's go. Then
let's
like
go,
every team
dude.
after, I'm like, nothing's the same. Nothing hits like that. So yeah, it was like honestly, it's probably my favorite trip of all time. And like even saying that, like obviously the place is great, but I think the sometimes I always like people always ask me like, "Where's my favorite place to go?" Blah blah. It's like I've been to cool places, but the most memorable things I have are always with who I'm with in those places.
Yeah,
Like
big
if I go to
difference.
a cool place but I'm with no one, it's not really memorable to me. So I don't a
Right.
lot of like the team was really cool, and I made a lot of friends, and the competition was great. I got my first international medal, and honestly,
Yes.
when I think of Australia, I don't even think of the competition. I'm just like, man, that was a good time. Just had a
That
good
was a good
time,
time.
hanging out. Yeah.
Barbecue
Uh,
22 hours a day.
yeah,
Oh, that's not
as
too
much as
bad.
you want, dude.
Really? Come
Yeah, when
on.
you the villages, you literally go in, take as much as you want. You could have 7 burgers, 18 patties on them. You do whatever you want. Yeah,
Jeez, what did I do
yeah,
the other what did I do the other day? I like sold something that I didn't expect to sell for the price that I didn't expect to sell it at. And so it was
yeah.
like an old workbench and I shouldn't have sold it. It was a couple $100 and I was like, no way is anybody get they got it. And so I was like, you know what? Forget it. So I went to this like meat store like where they have
Ooh, okay.
yeah, as like a
Yeah,
little like processed as possible, like the best one in the city. And I went in and I was just
yeah.
like, what can I get for this? I want bison, I want buffalo, and
Let's go.
I want elk. They were out of elk, but yeah, and then just got a bunch of steaks, got a bunch of ground beefs, bunch of chicken wings, and yeah,
Had a feast. Let's
that's
go.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was
I tried
it was nice.
kangaroo when I was in Australia. That shit sucks. I won't lie.
Yeah, it
That shit
wasn't
is
good.
terrible. And for some reason I decided a kangaroo steak. That's the like I feel like that's probably not what I should have went for my first time eating kangaroo, and it was
No,
terrible. Yeah,
what
never
options
doing
were
that
there to
again.
have it? Yeah, no kidding.
They had like kangaroo like sausage and things like that, like more like cooked, not like this medium rare kangaroo steak. Like I probably needed more like seasoning or have it in something. Do you know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
like they had emu there, they had alligator there, and things. So it was pretty good. Those all that stuff was great.
could eat emu. Weird. That's weird that those
It
countries do that. Like we don't eat
yeah,
our
right.
domesticated or
Yeah,
wild
you think
animals
like
here
Australia,
much.
kangaroos, they're like kangaroos, like hell yeah. So
What? That's
yeah,
crazy. Interesting. And so do you have like what I want to know is who's coming up after you? Like how do you guys like decide that? Like do you like is there somebody coming up after you to look at, like to look forward to? Is there I know it's you have
like a decathlete.
yeah. Like I know we jump back and forth there, but
Yeah,
I'm curious.
yeah. So I feel like with our qualification system, it's not like like in like rowing or something, you like qualify a boat, then you have to choose who's in it or something like that. Ours is like
Interesting. Yeah.
it's like results. You get the standard, you hit this ranking or world rankings, you get in. So just whoever does that. And I feel like for a long
Um,
time, like Damien was like alone in multi events doing nothing, and I came up, but like I just kind of appeared.
yeah.
In terms of like young athletes, I'm not so sure. I don't know if I know any super young decathletes that are like destroying the scene right now, but I mean, I definitely hope so because Damien is not young, and I still have a couple of years left. So it's always
Yeah.
nice to have like I'd like to have someone there with me competing. Just having another Canadian or another teammate, even though we're competing against each other. Like the decathlon is such a brotherhood where it's like, yeah, we're competing against each other, but we're also like I want you to do the best you can do. Like I'm cheering you on. Like it's nice
Yeah.
to have someone to lean on. And I feel like for Damien, it's kind of mutual in the sense that like we like being there and competing with each other and things like that. Running the 400s, we're like in the back room taking mustard shots and pickle juice together, and we all have like our own little Team Canada
Why?
section. It's real,
Like
dude. I it's to help with like the lactic acid when you run and stuff like that. And honestly,
oh,
my
interesting.
my physio just gives me things, and I'm like, okay, let's do it.
Do
So
you
I think
do you,
Damien had like a shot of balsamic vinegar. I don't know what he was doing. I had pickle juice. We were just dying back there, but it's fun.
do you think like your sports physio is just like, what could I get them to do today?
I know,
You know,
right?
and like at
Dude,
once a week, they're like, let's see if they'll
yeah,
do this exercise.
yeah. It's like this time you're gonna have this and I'm gonna throw in this, or rip my tape off super hard when I'm taped up. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
I
like,
don't know. We put them through a lot, so it makes sense.
jeez. I'm glad you answered that. Like, in terms of like how the spirit of competition is with you, like you and Damien specifically, but in terms of athletes that are competing against each other, because technically it's like there's only really one gold medalist. So it's like,
Yeah,
well, how does that work? But it sounds like you kind of almost need each other to like thrive a bit better. Like you kind of support each other,
yeah,
right? In a sense.
yeah. I feel like decathlon is it's so different from other events like sprinters or jumpers. I feel like they're a little more cocky. I gotta
Yeah.
win. There's that. Decathlon is like everyone kind of has a mutual respect for what we're doing, and it's pretty hard. So and everyone has such different strengths where it's like, oh, like this guy kicked my ass in shot put, but I'll kick his ass in this event. And I don't know, I guess for me, I always want to like, I don't know, I guess just a big mutual respect. I want these guys to be at their best and me to be at my best. And that's how I want to compete. I don't want to win because someone like, I guess fucked up or someone was like injured or things like that.
Yeah.
And we're competing with each other for 2 days straight. And a decathlon is a lot of waiting. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like I'll go do a long jump. There's 16 people who have to now jump, so I'm kind of chilling. And then you really get to meet and talk to people. You like go through. It's like 48 hours together, so you just become friends.
I guess I
Get a little
never thought
close.
of that. Yeah, I was like, I'd never thought of like just actually
Yeah,
talking to the people you're competing against.
yeah. Sprinters will go out. They'll sit in the blocks for. They'll look at their competitor for 10 seconds and run and get out. I'm like, so how'd that go? He's like, pretty shit. I'm like, how'd that? He's like, how'd it go for you? I'm like, pretty shit. And then we just laugh about it. So
Is yeah, I never would have thought of that. Like I guess yeah,
yeah,
sport dependent, I'm sure, but man, because
yeah,
I know what's it called? When I'm competing, like I'll do jujitsu tournaments and stuff like that. So like yeah, after,
nice.
before, and during, that's what we're doing. Is we're just like, hey, yeah,
Yeah,
ready? All right. All right, man, how'd that feel? Today I was the well, some days I'm the hammer, today I was the nail. So
yeah.
yeah, that's the kind of
Yeah.
added like
They just
banter.
there's yeah, it's like a lot of camaraderie. Like even at World Championships this year, it was like I was in second place. The
Yeah.
guy in third place is American, Zach, and I love Zach. He's great. And like the way the situation was I had to not lose to him by like 10 meters in the 1500. That was the situation. Nothing else, no other decathlete mattered. It was me and him fighting for second place. And I remember lining up in the line, we looked at each other. It's like there was respect. Like we know what we have to do.
Yeah.
It's like good luck. We'll see what happens. Shook each other's hands and that's it. Let's go. So and even after, like obviously I got second, but
Yeah.
they're just like, good try, dude. You made me run hard, that's for sure.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
it's like why by like 10 meters? Is that like after a certain amount, like in a certain speed? Or like
Yeah,
how
so like
yeah.
you'll have like let's say I think I was beating him by like 20 points.
Yeah.
And you get points based on I guess in the 15 minutes it's gonna be based on your time. So if you run 4 minutes, you
Yeah.
get let's say 1,000 points. So if he needs 20 points to beat me
Yeah.
and he runs 4 minutes and I run like 4:10, he beats me. But
That's
like
like the difference
roughly,
of
yeah.
yeah, okay.
I think it was like 4 or 5 seconds, which is like 10 meters roughly, based on our speed. So it's
That's
like, oh, if he's
hilarious.
yeah. So you kind of know these things, and I was like, it's like if I let's say I wanted to become win gold, I'd have to beat Kevin by like it was like 20 seconds, which is like 100 meters. I was like, that ain't happening. We're doing this. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not doing it. We're doing something else. So,
Jeez. No, yeah, Kevin's the French guy who won, eh?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He's a world record holder. Yeah,
Animal. Jeez. But
yeah.
what they all speak English, I guess for the most part.
Yeah. Mostly everyone except maybe like the Czech Republic guys
Yeah.
or Russian guys, things like that. They don't speak much English, but even then,
You know.
we communicate. You can communicate.
Yeah.
They give you a. I'm like, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah,
So,
I get that's
so
universal. That one's universal for
yeah,
sure.
exactly.
Do you have any kind of looking back on like the last like 10 years or so of like competing or kind of just the development, like your self-development that you've done? Do you have any like moments of reflection or lessons or something that you'd like to pass on or something that you even learned over that time period that's like stood with you and you believe will stand the test of time?
Mm, I mean, I think that, there's like a couple, the biggest thing for me that I had to learn when I was especially when I was a younger and a young kid was, I guess, the discipline part of, like, sport where, like, doesn't like, "Oh, you feel bad today, you feel tired, you need to still get to practice," and when I was younger, I'd be like, "Ah, I'm tired, I don't wanna go to practice," less
Yeah.
committed, and I remember my coach, he was like, "Pierce, like, talent or whatever is the ability to work hard," like, it doesn't matter if you're talented, 'cause if someone's less talented than you but puts in way more effort, how you can't just expect to beat them, that's like almost being entitled in a way.
Yeah.
That really stuck with me, and, yeah, I guess for me, the biggest learning curve was to, I guess, hold myself accountable throughout the years of, doing stuff. It's like, when you, like, look back at, like, things you used to believe when you were, like, 20 and you're like, "God, I was so stupid." It's kinda having that mindset,
Yeah.
even now where it's like, be open to doing things and, hold yourself accountable. Not everything you do is like it's the definitive right way, I guess.
I like that a lot. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have where can people watch you next and where can people find you or see what you're
Yeah, I
doing?
mean, I'm on the socials, Pierce LePage. I don't know if it's an underscore or dot. I'm pretty sure you can figure out on if you just Google me. I think I'm Wikipedia, but yeah, I think my next big event is gonna be Gotsis in the end of May. I'm doing a decathlon there. It's gonna be the season opener. Don't have
Nice.
huge expectations, but we'll see what happens. It's usually how first decathlon you're just like, we'll see what happens.
Yes.
So then World Championships this year. That's in later on
Yeah.
August. So
Oh,
yeah, then
perfect.
Olympics next year.
Right on. Well, I look forward to watching you compete and hopefully, and this is why I'm trying to manifest this.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
told a few people. I'm hopefully trying to watch, and I say this, I mean it. I want to see like I'm looking forward to watch you race and compete live in Paris because
Oh
I'm
yeah.
yeah, like I've been trying, like I'm putting that out there, manifesting like whether it's some form of media
Yes.
or whether that's just even in the stands because you're allowed to have them now.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, for
yeah, that'll
sure.
be really
That'd be great.
excited for that. So I wish you nothing but the best and safe training. Just can't have
Yeah,
you getting
for sure.
injured. So man, I really yeah, I really appreciate your time today a lot,
Oh,
Pierce.
thanks
So
for having
thank you
me.
very much.
And, yeah, to add on, just because you brought up, you maybe being in, Paris, I'm just gonna, I guess, share, like, a thing. I remember in Tokyo after day 1,
Yeah.
and, I remember opening up my phone and seeing, like, all the Canadians and all the people messaging me and wishing me, like, good luck and cheering me on. It was, like, some of the most overwhelming things it was, like, the most overwhelming thing, like, I've ever experienced in my life, so that was pretty awesome, so obviously,
That's so cool.
support and things is, yeah, super good.
Jeez, that's so cool. It just
Yeah,
blowed up, eh? Like every people you
yeah.
didn't know, not just family, friends.
Yeah,
Like,
just like Canadians, like, "Oh, wow, look at Pierce," or blah, blah, "Good job, Pierce Damien," just the support, I guess. You don't
yeah,
really, like, when you're training all year, you don't necessarily feel it, but when you're competing and people are cheering you on, it's like, "Oh, wow, all this stuff," A lot of people who are cheering you on, pushing you forward,
man, that's so cool.